Do you have a pile of envelopes sitting in a drawer somewhere? Junk mail, holiday leftovers, maybe some antiques that you've been hoarding, and you keep almost throwing them away, but something stops you. Well, I'm so glad it did because today I am going to show you how to turn envelopes into a beautiful little junk journal. And if you are one of the many, many people, especially beginners, who are intimidated by sewing in the signatures, I'm going to be showing you the lark's head knot binding. And it looks like you spend all afternoon on it, but it's super quick, super easy, and I think you're going to love this one. Hi everybody, Cindy the Scrapologist here. Welcome to my channel. This is the kind of tutorial you are going to want to save because it's one of those projects where you look at the finished product and you just cannot believe how easy it was to get there. I am going to show you a full flip through of mine at the end, but before we dive in, let me tell you just what we'll need. And I love this supply list because it is so short. First, you need 10 envelopes of any size and shape. These are ones that are 7 1/4 by 5 1/4. I just bought them at an office supply store or on Amazon or something, and then I put them through my printer. This is my End Papers digital kit. I put them through my printer so that they would be slightly decorated, but you don't have to do that. For this one, I just used tea-stained envelopes, and they can be any size. I'm using 10, but you can use as many as you want. You can have different sizes. For my own preference, my own taste, I like to have them all be the same size, but you don't have to. You could also use business envelopes, window envelopes, whatever you want. And that's the beauty of junk journaling, right? Mix it up, use what you've got. You will need some sort of twine or some other thread to sew in your signatures. For this one, I used baker's twine that I purchased at the dollar store. I would not suggest that for a beginner. Don't do something that is more than one ply initially because it's a little more complicated. Here I'm just using waxed bookbinder's thread. You can use embroidery floss, but again, because that has different strands, it's a little more complicated, but you can use whatever you have on hand. There's also regular thread that you can use. This happens to be bookbinder's thread, but if you have regular thread, go ahead and use that. Whatever you have on hand, and you can use up to 5 different colors. For this, I used 2 different colors, but you can have each one be a different color if you want to do that. You will need an awl or something, a needle or something of that sort to punch your holes. You will need some chipboard or cardboard for your cover. I am using bookboard because I have a bookbinder studio here and that's what I have on hand, but you can use cereal boxes, just use any cardboard that you have around. You can have a soft cover, a hard cover. You will also need something to cover that chipboard with. So whether it be a piece of scrapbook paper or whatever, a piece of fabric. I, of course, am using wallpaper from my shop because I love wallpaper. I've mentioned it many times before. I won't get into it again, but the main thing I like about it for covers is it's bigger than 12 by 12, so you can get several covers out of one sheet. So we're going to be using that. And then the easiest way to do this is if you have 5 different needles. You can use one needle if that's all you have, but you're going to have to keep rethreading it repeatedly. So if you have 5 needles, they can all be different sizes. It doesn't matter. But if you have 5 needles, this project is going to go really quickly for you. And that is it. That is the entire supply list. So now that you have your supplies laid out on your craft table, let's start building this little journal. I'm going to start with my envelopes. You can have your flap facing away from you, or you can flip it this way as your first page, and then when you open it, the flaps will be here. You can just do it however you want. They don't have to all be the same, but the side away from the flap is going to be your spine. So for example, for this one, the very first page, I had the back side of the envelope, and then when you open it up, the flap, a couple of times I had the flaps on opposite sides. One time or two I had the back sides showing together. It really doesn't matter. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just whatever you prefer. I think this time I am going to, I do like when you get an open spread like this without a flap. Of course, you could always take the flap and put it around to the back too and have an opening. So I think I am going to just put all of my envelopes like this with the flap to the right hand side. Let me make sure they're all to the right hand side, and they are. Okay, this is our signature, or our signatures. Now we just need to measure the width and the height of the envelope to determine the size of your cover. And you want to make sure, let me just get one here. So your spine is here away from the flap, and your pages are going to be all the way up against the spine like this. But you do want 1/8 of an inch here and 1/8 of an inch at the top and the bottom. So 1/8 of an inch on 3 sides. So measure your width and increase that by 1/8 of an inch. Measure your height and increase that by 1/4 of an inch. So for example, my envelope is 5 1/4. I increased it by 1/8 of an inch. My envelope height is 7 1/4. I increased it by 1/4 of an inch to 7 1/2. You want a little bit of a border. You want your cover to be just slightly bigger than your envelopes. Let's quickly cover this. Get out your scrapbook paper or whatever you're deciding to use. The beauty of this project is you don't have to make a spine. Usually we will separate the two, the front and the back cover, and we'll have to make a spine of chipboard or something else. On this project, you don't need to do that. I do like to use my 2-inch Score Pal tape, and my Patreon members have a 10% discount off of this. But you can use glue or whatever you have on hand. I personally don't like glue for my covers because it warps the chipboard. But just try to get good coverage so that you don't have any bubbles. But if you need to use glue and your cover warps a bit, just put it under some books, weigh it down for a while, and it will be just fine. Generally speaking, you do not want to use a glue stick in your projects. I bring this up all the time. Your projects are going to fall apart eventually. The glue does dry out and disintegrate. So double-sided tape really is the best if you can manage it. And let me show you the corner of my paper. And I'll show you how I just lay this down. So I have great coverage on there. This is not going anywhere once I put it down. But I just want about 1/4 of an inch border around my chipboard, so I like to So I have less cutting to do or trimming to do. I like to just place it down in the corner of my wallpaper. I'll burnish that down in a minute. Make sure I get a really good stick. And then do the same over here, but leave a good inch in between the two. And I'm gonna burnish this down just to make sure I get good coverage, good adhesion. And then I find the easiest way to trim this up is to use a quilting ruler and a quilting wheel. It makes things really quick and easy because you can measure 1/4 of an inch right there. So this is 1/4 of an inch, this is 1/2, 3/4, and an inch. And you get a really nice, even cut. So I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch. No, I'm going to do 1/2 an inch. Sorry, 1/2 an inch. Just to make sure I have enough to wrap around. I do need to change my blade, I can tell. And I'm going to do, doesn't matter, 1/2, 1/4. This is very thin chipboard, so if yours is very thin, you're not going to need that much. Okay, that was quick and easy. Now I'm just going to miter the corners. I have a handy little tool here called the Perfect Trim Ruler. It's fading. I've had it for years and years and years. But really all you need to do is just carefully, you can just take scissors and carefully cut the corner off, but leave just a teeny weeny bit there. Don't cut all the way to the edge of your chipboard. Now I've gone and put double-sided tape along all of my edges. You can do this before you miter too, or glue. If you're gluing, then this is a little harder. Maybe do one side at a time. And what I usually like to do is just take the long side first, and I just roll it. I just roll it on my desk like this, press down, and that gives me a nice edge. I do that with both of my long sides. And burnish that down. And then this little point here, you just need to roll it in just a little bit and kind of press it down so you have a nice corner there. Do that on both sides. And I do the same thing. Here we go. That gives you a perfect corner. Just roll, just round, use your bone folder and just round it, and then press it down so it's not sticking up. So many people stress out about this part, and that's all there is to it. I usually have perfect corners every time. Give it a good burnish. I'm going to do the other one, and then I'm going to be back. We're going to put something decorative on the inside. Because I'm using wallpaper, I had enough of the same wallpaper to cut pieces for the inside. So just cut just inside your border. If you want a nice border, you can cover the whole inside, but I think that this looks a lot neater. So I'm going to put double-sided tape on these and affix those down. Okay. So just burnish that down a little bit just to make sure it's going to stay on there. But isn't that beautiful? That's the beauty of wallpaper. Every single journal is going to be unique. No two are going to look alike. So this is what it's going to look like. You have to decide which one you want to have be your front cover and which your back. I think I'll have this be my front cover like this. And this will be my back cover. So just test it to make sure everything's going to fit right in. Look at how neat that looks. Very beautiful. The next part is optional. It's going to cause the project to be a little longer, but sometimes you may want to reinforce your envelopes. For this journal, I was using tea-stained envelopes that were starting to get a little bit crunchy, and so if you can see these strips of paper here, I did reinforce every envelope where I'm going to do the stitches. And the way that you do that is you just take a piece of paper. Again, I'm using wallpaper, but you can use scrapbook paper. And make sure it's the height of your book and 1 inch wide. And then if you have a scoreboard, you can score it in half, but if you don't, just fold it in half. I just made 2 for now. The other thing that this does is see how the spine is blue instead of it looking like this. And because these were tea stained, see how wonky they are? So that straightened them out in the spine just a little bit to neaten it up. So I do think it adds more of a decorative element, but if you're in a hurry, you don't have to do this step. So I'm just going to apply tape, and I'll show you the easiest way to put these on. There's a little trick to it. From this point on, you want to keep your book in order. So I'm just going to open it like this, and I'm going to take my first envelope. I'm going to put that up here now that you've seen it. I'm going to take my first envelope, fold this in half, and fold it rather neatly, because if you don't fold it kind of almost perfectly in half, your envelopes will start to get a little wonky. They won't all be nice and flush. But I found the easiest way to do this is just to take off the tape from one side first. Don't take off both. I'm also doing this because my envelopes didn't print perfectly. I walked away and didn't check on them. I forgot to put it on borderless, and it has this border here, which is not a big deal, but that's going to get covered. So put your envelope in the crease there. Looks like I did cut this too long, but I can trim it. Okay, and then set it down to make sure it's right in that crease. Then take your other piece off and fold it over. Okay, and I don't know what I did, but I did cut this wrong, so not a big deal. Fixed. Give it a little burnish. And I'm going to do all 10 of my envelopes with a reinforcing border, we'll call it. Look at the difference that this makes in the beauty of the journal from a stark white spine to this. So beautiful and professional looking just by adding these strips on, and your journal is going to last a lot longer with those threads going through something that's a little more reinforced. So I encourage you to do this step if you want, but it's okay too if you don't. It's your journal, and especially for your first one, if you just want to make a prototype and try one out before you're doing all the extra steps, then this video is going to be on my YouTube forever, and you can always refer back to it. Over on my Patreon, by the way, they got early access to this, and they also get all of my videos ads free so that they don't have to stop if they're in the middle of sewing, have their hands on something. You don't have to stop and hit skip on those annoying ads. So check out my Patreon if you like more of a quiet, calm crafting environment. Okay, so this is the part I'm so excited to show you. This is called a lark's head knot binding. Then the lark's head knot, it's also known as a cow hitch. It was documented as early as the 1st century by a Greek physician who used it as a surgical knot. And it's also used in macrame. So if you do macrame, this is going to be a really easy knot for you. And then it's used, of course, in bookbinding to secure the pages to the covers and to each other. Now, don't let that name intimidate you at all. If you've ever done macrame, you already know this knot. And if you haven't, you're going to love how simple this is. The first thing we need to do is make a template so we know where we are going to be sewing our signatures. Now, people make this a lot more complicated than it needs to be. So we don't really have to do a lot of measuring. For this particular binding, do you see how we're sewing right through the front and back of the cover? So we need to mark where these are going to be. We're going to come in 1/4 of an inch from the edge, from the spine. So the first thing you can do, and again, I don't need to measure, I just use the grid lines on my cutting mat here. And I'm just going to go up 1/4 of an inch from the edge of my paper. Try to make it as straight as possible. You can go up a tiny bit more than if you want to. It doesn't have to be exactly 1/4 of an inch. And I'm just going to draw a line here. And that's where I'm going to be punching my holes. Now, this is the part where everybody measures and does math. I stink at math. I don't like to do math. Here's how I figure out where my holes are going to be. I know that I want the top and bottom to be at least 1/2 inch from the head and the tail of the book, because you don't want to go up a lot closer. It will, the structure will not be as sound. Your paper might tear. So I'm just going up 1/2 inch from the top and the bottom. And then I want to do an odd number of signatures. So all I'm going to do is fold this piece of paper in half, open it up, and then fold this side into that center line, and fold this side into that center line. And that's where my holes are going to be. So I'm going to mark at this fold, at this fold, and at this fold. Now, this doesn't work if you have a big giant book, like you're doing a 12-inch book or something, but this is going to work perfectly fine. And the signatures, like I did on this one, are not evenly spaced. There's 2 close together at the top and the bottom, and then 1 in the middle. It really doesn't matter, guys. Don't stress out about it. This is the part where people really start losing interest, and it's just not that complicated. All right, let's punch our holes. I do have a punching trough, and actually I have a video on my channel on how to make your own punching trough out of chipboard. But that's if you're going to be cutting poking your holes into a spine, into the signatures. We're not doing that. We're punching our holes flat. So I'm going to set aside my covers for now. Make sure that my envelopes are the way that I want them to be. And it looks like they are. Yes. So make sure that your flaps are all on the right side away from the spine. And I always keep these in order and keep the top always up, and I just keep flipping and keep the book in order as I go. You can mark with a pencil T for top so that you remember to do that. And I am going to do that on my template here so that when I do the covers, oh my goodness, so that when I do the covers, I don't get mixed up. Okay, so now I'm going to just tamp down on my envelopes this way and this way to make sure that they are nice and even. And I'm going to take a clip and just clip them together because I like to punch through them all at once. Now, it's a little harder once you have the reinforcers on, but all you're really doing is doing a little hole. You can finish the holes up later. So I am going to put this here, and actually I can even clip it. And I have a nice, let me fix this. I have a nice awl that's ergonomic so it doesn't hurt my palm. And I'm going to go through as hard as I can all of my holes. And then I'm going to take my little template off, keeping in mind which is the top. This is the top of the book. And I'm going to flip it over like this and do the same thing on this side. Okay. Like I said, you can do this one at a time. It just tends to match up better if you do it this way. Okay, now I'm going to take my clips off and I'm going to check to see which holes need to be made a little bigger, or maybe the awl didn't go all the way through. So I'm going to, again, keeping these so I know where the top is, I'm going to go through and just reinforce my holes a little, or make them a little bit bigger now that I know where they're supposed to be. Envelopes are done. Let's put the book back together. Make sure the covers are the way we want them. Perfect. And now let's poke our holes in the covers. So we put a nice T on here. We know where this goes. And remember, you're going to leave a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch on the top and the bottom. But put the template right up against the edge of your spine. And I'm just going to clip it just so it doesn't move while I'm doing the holes. Keep this so I remember this is the top, and just make sure I went all the way through. And I can make these a little bigger. Okay. Now I'm going to use this one as a template for my next one. So I'm just going to put them together and clip them. And poke holes through the bottom cover. flip this to make sure that I keep the top. And this needs just a little bit bigger of a hole. Let me just check the other side. Okay. Here's the top cover. Here's the bottom cover. All of our holes are now in both the cover and the envelopes. Now for the fun part, the sewing. Now we're going to attach 5 threads to this cover. Pick one of your colors, and you're going to do at least 4 times the height of your book. Do maybe a little more, especially if you're doing 10 envelopes like me. I'm gonna do 5 because it's better off to have too much. You can always cut it at the end. Trust me on that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to get out my first needle and thread it. So for our first thread, we're going to end up with 5 dangling down here. That's why 5 needles is a lot easier. We're going to put the first needle through the first hole from the outside to the inside of the book cover. Outside to the inside. And then we're going to go through the same hole again. I like to pull on it this way and go in up here because you don't want to go through your thread twice. I mean, you don't want to puncture through your thread. For this one, we are going to take the needle off, but when we're doing the envelopes, I leave the needles on. We're going to pull this It's a little hard for me to show here, but I'm trying. We're going to pull this so that your 2 ends here are even. So now I like to pull towards me, and if I'm on the edge of my desk, down just a little bit and give it a tug. We're going to do that 5 times, 4 more times. So I'm going to show you one more, and I'm going to use a different color for this. I'm going to use white if I have enough here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's get this one out of the way. Normally it would be dangling off the desk, but I'm going to go from the outside to the inside. Pull it about halfway. And I'm going to go back inside, pulling my thread down so I don't poke through it. Back inside. I can take the needle off now. And then I am going to even these out. Make sure they're even. And give it a pull. Pull towards me and slightly down. Give it a tug. All right, I'm going to do the other 3 just like this in alternating colors, I think. Okay, so I have all 5 of my strings. So you see how we've just tied each one of these, wrapped it around the book cover. This is what the other side looks like. And you can see how this gets a little busy and hard to deal with if you just have it laying on your desk like this. This is why I do like to, and I suggest you do, hang it off the edge of your desk. So it would be kind of like this. It would be on the edge of your desk, and all of these would be hanging down out of your way. It's a lot easier to do it that way. But we can deal with this. I can try to do it this way, but let me make sure these don't get tangled. All right, we're actually going to be placing our envelopes on one at a time now. So I'm going to rethread my first thing of thread here. And you do want it to be separated. I mean, so you don't, make sure that this isn't all wrapped around itself when you thread your needle. And if I forgot to mention it, I'm using waxed linen thread. And once it's waxed, it goes through the books and the pages a lot easier. All right, so my first one is threaded. I'm going to kind of put my book back together again. So I've got my back cover and my envelopes. I know that this is the top because I have my little template here that says T for top. Okay, and now I am going to flip it this way. So this is now the top, and I'm going to take these off like this one by one. This is just how, well, not one by one, but this is just how I keep mine in order. Okay, so I'm flipping it like that, and this is my first envelope. And as I sew each one on, I'm going to take it and flip it like that. All right, this is the fun part now. I'm going to thread my needle, but make sure that your threads, your two threads, are not all tangled. You want to make sure they're able to be separated because we're going to kind of sew up through the middle of these. So I'm going to thread my needle. I'm going to get this out of the way. Here's my first envelope. So I'm going to take these two sides, and they're going to be on either side of the hole. Okay? And I'm going to bring the needle through the hole. And then between the two threads. So the two threads are still here. And I'm going between the two threads. And I'm going to pull. And you kind of end up with a big heart if you're doing it correctly. Pull. Give it just a little tug. We're going to go through, after we get all of these sewn, we will fix it down better, but this is what it should look like. So you've come out between this side and this side of that thread. Let's do another one. Let's take the white. So we're doing one envelope at a time. We're doing all 5. Then we're going to add another envelope. And then at the end, we're going to add the back cover. So you can see why it's easier with 5 needles. So you don't have to keep rethreading your needles. If you have 5 holes and 10 envelopes, you're going to have to rethread your needle 50 times. All right, so I've threaded my second needle. And I'm going to take my 2 ends, put them on either side of my second hole, go through that hole, and make sure that I'm on either side of here. You're not going through anything on the cover like you do with some, like the Coptic stitch and other things. We're not doing the cover. We're just sewing the thread from the cover onto the envelope. I'm going to pull. Sometimes because of my hands, I have a little bit of trouble gripping these needles, especially if I've been doing a lot of these, and there's a big knot there, so I use my little jewelry pliers. Okay, so there we have the mouse ears, or the heart, whatever you want to call it. And we're just going to pull just gently for right now. Let's do a third one just in case you need to see it. Thread my needle. Make sure my 2 threads are on either side of the hole. Let me zoom in a little. Hopefully this will help you to see it a little better. Okay, so either side of the hole. Go through the hole and nothing else, just the envelope. Make sure we're still on either side. Get our little heart or Mickey Mouse ears and give it a tug. Isn't that fun? It's so easy. I'm going to do these other 2 and then I'll show you how to do I'll speed this up for these next 2 and then I'll show you how we're going to attach our other envelopes. If you're using waxed thread, your hands are going to be a little slippery too, which makes it difficult to grip those needles. But now that we have all 5 on, now we can tighten them up. And you don't want to tighten really hard. You just a little tug will do towards you and then down, which I would do if I was on the edge of my desk. Towards you and down. Let's do our next envelope. So I'm going to take my envelope because of the way I laid them out, and I'm going to flip it this way. And we're going to do the same exact thing. It's that easy. So we're going in between our 2 threads through only this envelope, nothing else, staying in between those 2 threads and pull. Again, keeping it rather loose until we're done with all 5. Let's make sure they're nice and flush and give it just a little tug. And I'm just going to start the 3rd one. I think you probably get it from here because it's so easy. I'm just going to take this one, flip it, and we're just going to keep doing this stitch for all 10 envelopes. And then the back cover gets put on a little differently. I'm going to go ahead and sew all 10 of my envelopes on, and then I'll come back and we'll put on the back cover. So now we have all 10 envelopes sewn on, and isn't that just beautiful? It looks like you spent hours on it. I just love this stitch. Now we just need to attach our back cover, and it is a little bit of a different stitch, but it's still super, super simple. For this one, on the front cover, we went from the outside to the inside. On the back cover, we're doing the opposite. We're going to go from the inside to the outside through our first hole. I'll get my little tool here because that's a big knot. Okay, we're going to do that, and then I like to push my cover away a little bit because we need to now put our needle through well, my thread is stuck together because it's waxed. Let me see if I can separate that. Okay, so we need to put our needle through here, and we're going to pull. And I'm not going to tighten it up yet because I want to keep my cover here, but I am going to remove my needle. We can remove the needles as we go now. And remember to make sure that this is not tangled. So I'm going to go up from the inside to the outside. Ooh, I think I need to make this hole a little bigger. Got it. This is just a big lump here, so I should have made my holes a little bigger. This, I'm using pretty thick waxed linen thread that I normally don't like this thickness, but it was the only thread I had that was multiple colors. Okay, this is twisted here, so let me fix it. Okay, and then we are going to go through again. That's kind of the theme here. We're always working with our threads to either side. These are the threads that we just pulled through, and I'm going to go through there. Oops, I tore my book a little bit with my needle. Inside to outside. You can buy bookbinder's needles that are blunt on the end. I like those because I always seem to be poking myself, puncturing myself. Pulling. Until I have 2 threads, and I'm going to go through that and remove my needle. All 5 done. We're going to, whoops, I forgot to cut the needle off of this one. We're going to pull it taut, but not, let's just make sure the cover is in place. Towards you and down. Towards you and down. Okay, then we're going to take, again, working with these split, we're going to open the cover up just a little bit. You should have a little bit of a gap there, and put a string on either side. And pull it through, and then just do a square knot. This is where you do want to give it a little extra tug. Okay, and cut your ends off. Let's do that again. This is where you can kind of finagle your knots just a little bit if you want to get things, if they're a little uneven and you want to get them straighter. So I'm just going to separate the 2 strings down through the gap, one on the right, one on the left. This makes me want to take up macrame again. That was a fun project in the 70s. When I'm tying and bookbinding this type of knot, I pull up and then to the sides. It just seems to make it more secure and taut. That's the back of our book. There's our spine. Isn't that gorgeous? You see what a difference that makes when you do put the reinforcers on the spine. But this one's a little wonky. You know, you can just use your fingernail and move around your signatures so they're a little more straight if that bothers you. So beautiful. There's the front. And I love the way it lays flat. Isn't that so nice? And you have plenty of room. Look at all the room you still have. So if you want to stuff the envelopes with ephemera and fun things, you can journal on here, decorate. And before I show you the one that I've decorated, real quick, if you're finding these videos helpful today, would you just give my video a thumbs up? It truly does help other people find my tutorials like this one, and it helps my channel, and it's really appreciated. So I'm going to show you this one, but before I do, I also want to mention that this is a wonderful project if you have single sheets that you just don't want to cut. You don't, if you don't have to use envelopes, you can use single sheets. And I'm actually over my Patreon going to show, I'm making a gift for a teacher, and I cut one of these dry erase boards, made it into covers, and I'm going to put some single sheets in here and use this method and make a journal out of it. So for this one, just quickly I'll show you. I just took an extra piece of the wallpaper and made a pocket, sewed around it, and threw a tag in there. I didn't do a lot of decorating for this one. This is something that I showed recently where I distressed shiny pages to make them look more vintage. I love the way this one turned out. I just did some stamping. This one I taped down the flap here and here and made it into a side tuck. This is just another one of the glossy images that I distressed. And you see how nice the reinforcers look? They make it look really nice and cohesive. I just decorated some of the flaps, put some old dictionary page on here, some sewing pattern paper, and some other embellishments. So that's all I did. If you like the way my envelopes look, go over and check out my how to tea stain paper video. It's a two-step process. It's so easy and quick, not like a lot that you see where they're baking the paper in the oven and everything else. That's too much for me. But I hope you liked the project. Thanks for watching.